All right, everybody, I'll call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board for Wednesday, July 6th. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings in several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Hoffman, could you read our community prayer?
Sure. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we've been allowed to serve, that may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek, and keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. The first item on our agenda this evening is citizens' participation. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Ms. Dormer? Ms. Dormer, we have the air conditioning on tonight. That creates a lot of background noise sometimes, so if you could just ensure to speak into the microphone.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm here representing Carver's Concerned Citizens.
Thank you. If you could just name and address just for the folks at home,
sure,
please.
sorry. Mary Dormer, 162 Plymouth Street.
Thank you.
And I am here on behalf of Carver's Concerned Citizens tonight, and we're very concerned with the upcoming siting board meeting on July 12th, and we are asking for your support to not allow Cranberry Point to be exempt from our zoning laws. As you know, during the town meeting, we had an overwhelming vote to put a moratorium on this project, and we expect that we get the support of our representatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Ma'am?
This is unrelated to Cranberry.
That's all right. As long as it's on our agenda, you can speak to it.
All right, my name is Minnie Patel. My address is 239 Tremont Street. This was more of an inquiry about the last meeting in the Cape Cod NGR case regarding Jellystone Park. I'm not sure if you received this information. Pretty sure my dad sent it in last week about the zoning bylaws of Carver. I'm not sure if you know.
I think probably if you have a question, you probably should direct it to the town administrator.
Okay, so talk to you after?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ma'am?
My name is Judith Pratt. I live at 284.
If you could just speak into the microphone, please.
This okay? My name is Judith Pratt. I live at 284 Meadow Street here in Carver. I'm actually a Carverite. I've lived here in Carver for close to 50 years, seen very many changes, and I'm very, very concerned about this project and where Cranberry Point would be placing it's the battery within 400 feet of homes and miles of schools in the middle of town. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want that close to me, something like that. And I don't think they really looked into the dangers. They say they're prepared, but you can't put it out with water when it leaks. And batteries have a habit over time of eroding and leaking. And with all the digging of the sands and cutting down the trees that filter pollution for air and water, that's a big thing too. And we've been finding that where they've been digging, it interferes with the flow of the water. And it's contaminating things. It's contaminating wells. It's contaminating certain bodies of water. And that's also a concern of mine. And as far as the the zoning thing, we have the right to the protection of the town zoning laws, and we have the zoning laws for a reason. We should have the right to use our zoning laws to decide how best to protect our safety, our health, and our well-being. Our sole source aquifer that provides drinking water for at least 7 towns is already said to be a little contaminated because of the digging and everything, and that concerns me greatly. I also have a well, and I know a lot of people have wells, and it's just a very, very big concern of everything that's been going on in the town. I won't get into everything else, as you know, but it doesn't seem to be leading in a very good direction. And I feel that our little town is now a dumping grounds, just a dumping grounds. North Carver's already been polluted, and there are other areas that are now starting to get polluted, and I just feel that these people are just bringing all these projects here, and that we're just one big dumping ground, and that's my opinion. And I thank you for listening and allowing me to speak.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else? Mr. Duggan.
Yeah, my name is Bill Duggan, 285 Meadow Street. I'm speaking to the bylaw change that's being recommended. Numerous articles and books and DVDs, etc., are showing up debunking the idea that renewable energy from wind and solar will save the planet from the evil fossil fuels.
Mr. Duggan, just please, if you could, I appreciate everyone's comments, but if you could just, we have a very busy agenda tonight. If you could just try to keep your comments to the item that's on our agenda this evening, which is the request to be exempted from our zoning regulations.
Yep. There's a number of books, like I say, that are debunking, the whole idea of wind and solar. Battery storage is directly tied to that because they want to put this battery storage thing in to store energy from these things. But if there's a dubious question about the renewables, then why are we doing the battery storage? The idea of putting a battery in North Carver, if there's an event of electricity out at South Carver, how do we get the electricity from that battery storage unit? I think it's just time to revisit the whole idea of renewable energy, and I don't think that allowing an entity from outside of Carver to dictate what bylaws we should enforce or not enforce or whether they should be exempt from the bylaws is, to me, it's the epitome of arrogance to let them dictate to us, how we want to, protect our community. So that was just, I don't think anybody should be changing the bylaws. What a good bylaws if we're, especially someone from out of town. So.
Thank you, Mr. Duggan. I do want to keep to our agenda, but is there anything new? Does anybody have anything new that we haven't heard? Well, just two folks. Is that all we're ready to speak? All right, I'll let you both. I'll let 2 more speak, but we have to keep it to the agenda. We have a very tight night tonight, so I'll let you folks decide which. Mr. Shea. And I just ask you to please keep your comments to the agenda item tonight, which is the request for exemption from our zoning.
I think you should allow, Cornelius Shea, 148 Plymouth Street, Carver, and I think everybody that wants to speak should be allowed to speak. But first of all, the zoning bylaws are specifically related to the health and safety of the residents of Carver, and dispensing of such, which I would argue is outside of the collective powers of the select board, really puts the people at this town at risk. This is already an approved project, and it already has a special permit in regards to meeting our zoning bylaws. This hasn't been in front of the planning board. I think you'll notice that the request wasn't made through the planning board, and the planning board is responsible for the powers of zoning and the enforcement in this town. And although we might not be perfect, there are certainly very dedicated individuals that first and foremost on their minds is the health and safety of the people of this town. And finally, if I might say, this law is specifically related to public service companies, or more commonly known as public utility companies. And I think you would be hard-pressed to prove that a battery storage facility in any way is a public utility company. It downloads the utility from Eversource, and then in the evening when the power is cheap, and then it reloads it back into the system during the daytime. So as a utility, I would argue that it is not a public service company, and they should not be exempt from the zoning bylaws. Thank you very much for your time this
Thank you, Mr. Shea. All right, just before we hear from one more person on battery storage, is there anyone here that wants to speak on anything else on the agenda? All right. So, ma'am?
Good evening. Kim Shea, 148 Plymouth Street. I'm a little surprised to be here, and the reason is, so I'm looking at the agenda by the request by Cranberry Point Storage for exemption of the comprehensive bylaws, and they're talking about Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 3. Well, I went to those laws, and if you go to Mass General Law 40A, Section 7, it clearly states, no permit or license shall be granted for a new use of a building, structure, or land which would be in violation of any zoning ordinance or bylaw. So by state law, you can't exempt them. The planning board can't exempt them, and I really think everybody needs to be aware of that. You know, you guys are here. You do a great job. I have utmost respect for every single one of you and what you do here. I don't always agree, but you do a great job. You do a good job protecting the citizens of this town. You follow the town bylaws. Just like the planning board follows their bylaws, so they protect the citizens of this town, and that we can grow this town in a responsible manner. Just like the conservation board is here to protect our open resources and our natural resources, to protect the people of this town. It's 2 days after the 4th of July, where everybody in this room and everybody in this town has celebrated our independence from government tyranny. I really hope this board does not even take into consideration this request by this private company. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Shea. Is there only one more person that wants to speak? Just one more? All right, sir. Just please try to be as concise as possible. That's all. Thank you.
My name is Dan Farini, 84 Fosdick Road, and I represent Carver Concerned Citizens. We're asking you not to vote for this tonight because we as a town turned out en masse at the elections and showed what we want, and we're asking you tonight to follow with that. And to let everybody know, next week, July 12th, there is a Zoom meeting with the state where we're asking everybody that's here to come into that Zoom meeting and show the state that we want to stop this. We do not want that damn thing in our town. I don't know how many times the people in this town have to get up, post signs, and tell everyone, stop it. We do not want it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, folks. We appreciate all your comments. Moving along, the next item on our agenda is the discussion on a request by Cranberry Point Storage for exemption of comprehensive bylaws pursuant to Chapter 40A, Section 3. Mr. Fennessy, can you give us a little background on this?
Sure. So first of all, thank you everybody for coming. And on that back table there, there's a document that gives the link to the Zoom meeting. So if you want to pick it up on your way out, you can have that. So on May 11th, the Cranberry Point filed a petition for this comprehensive exemption of the zoning bylaws of Carver. The Energy Facility Siting Board, the EFSB as it's known, is reviewing and will determine whether the zoning exemption is required for the project and if the proposed use of the land or structure is reasonably necessary for the convenience or welfare of the public. So the public hearing, which I think they mentioned, the last gentleman, is July 12th at 7:00 p.m. So again, if you want to weigh in, if you're going to make comments on it, you have to pre-register your name to make a comment. So read that document that's in back.
Mr. Fennessy, just
yep.
not to interrupt, but can we get that information on the town website?
We can.
So people
yep.
can have it
Yep.
there? Okay, thank you.
It's up there now? Okay. So today, the board obviously has a decision whether they want to oppose or support that petition, or do nothing. I mean, that's the board's prerogative. So one of the things I would suggest, if you do take an action to oppose or support, that you authorize me to send a letter of that
Okay.
within the time frame that's necessary.
All right, and before we continue, are Mr. Bott and Mr. Boyle here? If you could, maybe folks just step up to the table, just in case the board has any questions. Thank you both for attending tonight. We appreciate it. And Mr. Fennessy, just so I'm clear, any vote the board might take tonight is non-binding on the state, correct? That's just an
Correct.
opinion of the board.
Correct. Yeah, I would assume they would take it into consideration.
We would certainly hope. Okay, comments from the board?
Thank you,
Ewens?
Mr. Chair. Yes, we discussed this a little bit previously with Mr. Bott, I believe, and one of the things that struck me was that typically the town does not want to have exemptions from its local bylaws. The town wants control, and as well it should. And the example that Mr. Bott brought up was the Chapter 40B applications, in which an applicant can basically come into town and build affordable housing in such a way that might not be appropriate for the town or for the residents who live there. And they would be exempt from all our local zoning, including our conservation bylaws. And so, in my opinion, we should not be in favor of a comprehensive zoning exemption for this or for any other project. Having said that, however, I do want to correct something that was stated earlier. My understanding is that the moratorium does not cover this particular project. It covers projects going forward from the date of town meeting if approved by the Attorney General.
I disagree.
And so this project, if I may, Mr. Chair, this project has already been permitted through the planning board. It went through site plan review. It got a special permit, which required a supermajority of the planning board to approve that, which it did. And just to be really clear, the proponents have so far followed all the town bylaws, all the regulations, and they're in compliance with our zoning currently. And in addition, the building code and the fire code are not under discussion here. Those stay, as Mr. Boyle, I'm sure, will tell us. Those, regardless of the outcome at the state level, those two codes will continue to be in force.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Mr. Hoffman?
I guess I have a couple of questions first. One, to touch on what Sarah had said. So the moratorium that was voted on, that was for future permits to be granted,
Correct.
correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, so this project was already, and I believe Mr. Shea had mentioned it, has already received a permit,
That's correct.
and, okay.
But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Just, if I may, I think discussion of the moratorium is a little off agenda here. That's
Right.
Well,
not,
the only reason I brought it up, Mr. Chair, is because the comment was made that the moratorium concerned this project. And my understanding is that is not the case. This project's been permitted.
I understand, and
But the reason I brought it up was because our discussion item that we're having right now, I think people are confused on this, that they're thinking that we have the power right now to deny this project, but the project has already been permitted, site review, so this project as of right now, we can't.
I think those are both good points, and maybe what I might do just to move this along, and I do think it's important that we stay to the agenda item we have. Maybe, perhaps, Mr. Bott, could you speak quickly to the moratorium, and then we'll sort of put that discussion aside and get back to our agenda item that we have before us.
If I may have a couple of points. I'm Sharon, members of the board. I'm Thomas Bott. I'm the town planner here in Carver, Mass. Regarding Cranberry Point Energy Storage request for a comprehensive zoning exemption, I recommend that the town write the Department of Public Utilities opposing a comprehensive zoning exemption. The project's been granted a special permit with no appeals. Further, the planning board approved an extension of the site plan and special permits until March 31, 2023. Later, the planning board approved a modification of the site plan. Now, prior to town meeting, the applicants filed an A&R plan which likely grandfathers the property from any zoning changes for 3 years. In addition, the state of emergency cited in Section 17B III of Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, the COVID legislation essentially, told, that is, paused the clock on permit expirations, adding 462 days to any permits, and that includes special permits that were in place by March 10, 2020. The original special permit was approved on March 26, 2019. For these reasons, the permits are in place and later modifications and extension. In addition to the state's tolling and a 3-year grandfathering from any changes in the zoning bylaw, I don't, in my opinion, feel the comprehensive zoning exemption is necessary. The point has been made, and this point's been made to Cranberry Point Energy Storage on a recent call. But I understand why they're asking for this belt and suspenders approach is to protect their investment of time and money in their project. Cranberry Point notes in their filing that they don't believe the moratorium applies to their project. They later note on page 8 of their filing, now with the politicization of battery storage, the applicant is concerned that minor modifications which might normally be handled administratively could be subject to new zoning bylaws and delays of the construction. And I understand that too, because we live in a world where unfounded allegations repeated time and again, hoping folks will believe such a statement to be true. And Cranberry Point is clearly concerned. Now, as Sarah pointed out, Ms. Hewitt's pointed out, I made parallels to the comprehensive zoning exemptions in Chapter 40B, that affordable housing permits. But the applicant has complied with all the zoning to date. They have complied with the Carver zoning bylaws. And as we pointed out a couple times, the hearing is scheduled for July 12th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. There'll be a recording of the public comments posted on the department's YouTube channel, and written comments can be accepted until 5 p.m. on the 26th. And that gives people an opportunity to watch the proceedings and prepare any comments they may have for the Energy Siting Board to any salient points that one feels weren't covered during the hearing. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions
right.
about the matter.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Any questions?
Yeah, I guess over the last week or so, I think many of us have received a lot of emails that were signatures from a petition online. And I know that I have written back to everyone that was from a Carver resident, thanking them for sharing the opinion and letting them know that I was actually on the Carver Planning Board when this project came to the Planning Board, and I was the only member that voted against the project. Bringing that to what's in front of us today, I am adamantly opposed to letting this company get their exemption from our bylaws. It is absolutely scary to think that any entity would get a permanent free pass from the bylaws forever. something that I saw in a document, and I'm sorry, my heart is beating out of my chest. Coming from the planning board, when this project was there, I've just got a lot going on in my head. So when I was reading something that Mr. Fennessy sent, that from the company, when I was reading it, they had used the word initial or initially, and it said to the state that initially they were going to have either 117 or 127, whatever number they used, initially a certain number of battery containers. And not to put you on the spot, Jim, but I might need you to help me remember. When they brought it to the planning board, I don't remember the term initially being used to us. It was just, there will be this number of battery containers. I don't remember the word initially being used. So to me, that was like red flaggy, like the plans were already changing. So for lack of better words, to me it's scary that like they already know they're gonna make changes. So to give them a free pass for forever is scary to me. So I am opposed to this. I support what is in front of us. To have the town administrator write a letter opposing this to the board. I hope if it comes to a vote, the board members would support it, because it's a scary idea to give them a free pass to the zoning bylaws forever.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bogart. Is there anything else from the board?
Just, I guess, my 2 cents. Thank you for everyone's comments this evening. And, I appreciate it, gave me some information, but deep down, I just, after reviewing all this information, and based on what the town planner had said, it just doesn't seem like this exemption's needed. I did have one quick question, though. Let's just say through the course of the next year, 2-year planning process for Cranberry Point, if they need a minor change or any change whatsoever to the existing permit, does that almost create a new process?
We could certainly confer with town council, but in my opinion, no, it does not. It's a modification to an existing permit. It's something that the board does on a pretty regular basis. In fact, it's in the zoning bylaw to allow minor modifications. There's a threshold for what makes a minor modification a minor modification. So it does not create a new application.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And just to concur with the rest of the board, I'm certainly, I don't feel comfortable giving anyone a blanket exemption from our zoning bylaws. Before we move on
Mr.
to...
Chair, can we hear from
Ms. Ewens.
Deputy Boyle?
Yeah, well, that was my...
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
was just going to ask Mr. Boyle if he had any comment on this.
Hello, Jesse Boyle, Assistant Deputy Chief for the Carver Fire Department, responsible for code enforcement and fire prevention. In lieu of any specific questions from the board, I just kind of want to address the topic in general. No matter which way the EFSB decides whether to accept the bylaw restriction or not, it's important to note that the fire department's requirements do not change. We've already gone through the very critical site plan review process, which was lengthy. In knowing at the time that we issued our comments for site plan review that it would be quite some time before the project was actually constructed, we included in our requirements the opportunity to continue to adjust our needs and specifications for safety. And we will continue to do that for this project. The fire codes continue to evolve, building codes continue to evolve. That's where the fire department's role is, and we'll continue to adjust our expectations. I will say that the developer has been very cooperative to work with as far as our requirements. Carver Fire Department and the town of Carver do have additional requirements above and beyond what the fire code calls for. And that's, as anybody can imagine, not always easy to get people to agree with that. But we've had a great deal of cooperation from these developers.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Is there anything further from the board? Mr. Hoffman.
I just have a question for Mr. Bott. So I'm a little bit confused, and I think maybe more people might be as well. So this project, so the reason, I guess I'm confused is why would they ask for an exemption if it's been permitted? Any minor modifications would fall under that permit. So why would they want to look to get an exemption from any bylaws?
I think I characterize it as a belt and suspenders operation. Your belt holds up your pants, but sometimes you put suspenders on as well. So they're just looking for various ways to sort of bolster their position. So they're trying to pull any lever that's available to them in order to ensure that nothing goes off the rails on their project. That's my opinion.
Okay. All right, so,
That comment period is ended. This is a select board discussion now. Is there anything else, any other comments from the board on this?
I have two questions, one to Mr. Bott and one to Mr. Fennessy. Would the planning board either be able to or be interested in having like an emergency meeting to maybe either having you taking a vote or having a discussion on this same issue and potentially supporting the issue and having you draft a letter or jumping on ours if we support the idea? Because having it come from two boards would be stronger than one.
Well, I think the chairman of the planning board is still within earshot. So,
Okay.
And we don't post our agenda for our meeting on the 12th until later this week.
Well, because it's due the 12th, I think. I don't know. Okay, just throwing it out there.
Comments
No.
are accepted through July 26th at 5 p.m.
Okay, just throwing it out there. And then question to you, if we go forward with an opposition letter, could we reach out to our local representatives and let them know the way that we feel? Because I would expect them to support their towns and reach out to the state and say, you know, it's not right that you're telling one of my towns that you're going to ignore their zoning bylaws. And you're just going to tell them you don't matter.
Yeah,
we
and
can certainly do that,
I can send a
correct?
copy to them of the letter and ask them to support what the board decides to do.
Yeah.
It's a good idea, yeah.
All right.
I mean, like here, there's strength in numbers, and I think they work in the State House, so they're a little closer to the action than we are down here.
All right, I'm seeing a lot of, I think, agreement from the board here. Is there a motion on this?
I just have one other quick question
Mr. Hopp.
to Mr. Bott. This exemption that they're asking for, have you ever been involved in something like this before as far as a project?
I have not.
Okay. I mean, I agree. I think I think all of us agree that, you know,
So,
being exempt from town bylaws are 100% wrong. We have bylaws for a reason. Jen and I were on the planning board at one time, and I always said, if people don't like the laws, well, the bylaw, let's change the bylaw. But you have to stick to the bylaw. And that's why no.
that's exactly my feeling as
Yep.
well, Mr. Hoffman.
Okay,
Is there
thank you very much for answering the questions, because I appreciate that.
a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we authorize the town administrator to submit a letter on behalf of the select board stating that the board is opposed to the application of Cranberry Point storage for the comprehensive exemption of the town zoning bylaws pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3.
Thank you. Is
I
there-
would also like to add, however, that I think it should be clear that what has evolved in the process, I think the state should understand that currently they have complied, that they have their special permit. Just a factual, point.
Is that part of your motion?
yes.
Is there excuse me, please. Is there a second on that motion? Hearing none.
Okay.
Is there another
that's fine.
motion?
Sure. I will move that we authorize the town administrator to submit a letter on behalf of the select board stating the board is opposed of the application of Cranberry Point storage for the comprehensive exemption of the town zoning bylaws pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Shea,
It's not a statement, while we're on the subject, Cornelia Shea, 148 Plymouth Street,
Mr.
Carver.
Shea, I'm sorry. We're going to move along with our meeting here. Please, you can have a comment with
board
the
should-
town administrator later on. Mr. Shea, I'm sorry. We're going to move along. All right. We'll move along. Our next agenda item is, let's see, to review and authorize the year-end interdepartmental budget transfers. Let's see. Mr. Fennessy has prepared a handout here. Mr. Fennessy, is there? Okay, folks, if you could just have your conversations outside, please.
It is not fully permitted. Still have a chance to stop it. We, the people, have
Okay.
a right to be heard.
And you were heard during public comment. All right.
It's not fully permitted.
Mr. Fennessy, Mr. Fennessy, we're going to move along. Can we talk about the year-end transfers, please?
All right, so you should have in front of you a chart of year-end transfers. These are routine annual end-of-the-year transfers. When one budget, you got to remember the budgets are made almost 2 years ago, drafted and approved. So when one budget goes over their budget for unforeseen reasons, and other budgets are under their allotment. Excuse me.
Excuse me, folks, if you could please just take your conversations outside right now or try to keep it down, because the folks at home are unable to hear. It creates a lot of background noise on the Area 58. Thank you. Mr. Fennessy.
So if you look at the list of the departments, if you take two of the departments, the police and the legal services, that accounts for 1/2 of the transfers that are being made to cover those departments. So the total for the whole town for the whole year is transferring interdepartmentally, again, not new money coming into this, $362,870.
Okay. Have these transfers all been reviewed by the Finance Committee?
Yeah, a week ago Monday, the Finance Committee had a meeting which we attended, and they discussed this and they voted unanimously 7-0 to make the transfers.
Thank you. Okay. Discussion from the board?
Yeah, I've got some questions. Typically, maybe things have just changed. In the past, they were never this large, these year-end transfers. And
Mr. Carter, if you could just make sure to speak into the
Sure.
microphone.
I can't really.
Can you hear me?
Now we
Now
can.
I
yes.
Okay. In the past, these transfers were never this large, $300,000. And typically, you'd have the school transfers and you'd have the municipal side transfers. And on the school side, the superintendent and the school committee would go through their transfers internally and make their moves between line items. And municipal side handled the other side of it.
Yeah.
Here, we've got a mixture of things that say pulling from the school, pulling from something else. I don't.
Okay.
What's changed? I guess.
So, on the school side, they do their transfers. This is money that they're transferring into the police department from the school for the police officer that's at the school. So they're picking up $60,000 of the cost of our police officer to be in the school system. And that was through an agreement and a very nice gesture on the part of the schools to make sure that they have the SRO available, for the schools. So that's where you see the school. So you don't see anything else in here with the school. These are all town departments that need these funds to balance out their budget at the end of the year. And again, it seems high, but predates me and the finance director. But when you look at two budgets, the legal services is kind of off the rails, about $60,000 over. And police are $125,000 for salaries, and a lot of that was based on the COVID coverage. They had some of the police officers out. Also, when these budgets have been being drafted over the past 8 years, they never increased the overtime budget. They kept it the same dollar figure, basically, and there was increases in their salary that raised the amount of overtime in their salary. But that wasn't accounted for. So all that is figured into that $125,000 that's being transferred into the department. The other ones, a lot of them are small. There's one as small as, I think it was $15 to the earth removal expense for postage. And then there's some other ones that were never even given a appropriation. So it's picking it up now. These are things that obviously we're going to look at next year when we start developing a new budget for 24, because 23 basically is done. And we'll hopefully get to where that is, narrowing it down again.
Okay. But speaking on the police budget, I'm looking at the cost through May. And from an overtime perspective, it looks like the run rate is somewhere between $30,000 and $36,000 for the month.
Well, if I may, I noticed that we have our police chief here in the in
Get
the,
up here, Chief.
at the meeting tonight. Perhaps he'd like to come up and join us since we're speaking on his budget. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for being here this evening.
So just kind of doing the math, we've got some shortages here, both in overtime for dispatchers and police of roughly, what do you got? About $53,000. So you have, that comes out of the 125. And then your overtime runs about 40, so that gets me around 95,000, but the transfer is for 125. So two-part question, why more than what's really covered in overtime? Secondly is, when we make this transfer, the overtime number goes up to $380,000 for the year. And you and I have many conversations over the past, when overtime was large, you need a body. So is the plan to keep the overtime around the 380, or are you looking to hire more bodies?
Both.
Both?
So the answer to your question is, the first part, why the difference on salaries? The difference in salaries is, through the process that everyone went through to hire a town administrator, you hired a temporary town administrator who negotiated a contract successfully with the police union that increased the number of sergeants by 2 and helped with the increase of accountability for our police officers. Positive changes that were made, however, corrections weren't made to the budget because the budget had already been submitted. So the salary increases along the lines of the deputy chief and the new sergeants were not included in the original budget, and were not, the budgets weren't updated. No fault of the current town
Chief,
administrator.
excuse me, if you could just be sure to speak right into the microphone, because there's a lot of background noise from the
Certainly.
from the air conditioning.
So the budgets were, the salary line was not increased as it needed to be based on the contract negotiations that were carried out previously. So that's a big part of that chunk. The overtime is the overtime. As you mentioned, we have not, in the budget process in the past 9 years, increased our overtime budget ever, even though every year the police officer's salary goes up by at least 2%, and you get less hours of overtime for the same amount of money. The money that comes from the school is part of a program that the superintendent and I work together to make sure that we have bodies in the school for protection of the school, in addition to the SRO, and we do that on overtime because, as you mentioned earlier, we don't have the bodies. We are hoping this year to hire at least one more body. We have a plan in place to try to hire one each year for the next 3 years to get us ready for the 2025 retirements that are coming. To be somewhat ahead of that, but even doing that will not get us back to our current, the appropriate level. We're currently at 17. We should be at around 20 or 22. We do the best we can with the numbers that we have and the budget we have, but that does require the use of overtime to fill roles that might be filled by somebody on regular salary if we had the number of bodies needed. Part of the plan that has been worked out with Hillwood, if they build that facility up north, is the coverage of 2 officers' salaries for 3 years, which will help us get to where we need to be, and hopefully with the increase in taxes from that, we'll be able to remain at that level. I hope that answers your question.
Nope, you did. Thank you very much.
Sure.
There's just a large number on here. So.
It is a very large number, and as I've sat here for 9 years telling you, I take it very seriously spending your money, and I've done I believe that a very good job of that. But there are some factors this year that we couldn't mitigate. Mr. Fennessy also mentioned this is the second year of COVID, and we had a much greater amount of people out with COVID this year than we did the first year, the original year. So that's another that chews up overtime that we have to replace them.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Is there anything else from the board on this? Anyone?
I just had one more. Just one other thing. Was
Mr. Cotter?
The $100,000 coming out of sources for health insurance, Article 2016. What are those funds? That's a source of funds?
So that's there was in 2016, there was an article to put money aside for health insurance. That was during the years when there were double-digit inflation on health insurance. So the town administrator at that time proposed, and the board supported, an article to put money aside for that. It's not needed now, and there's still money in there, even taking out this $100,000.
But I thought all
moving it into this.
But I thought all these hanging balances were taken into consideration when we had the free cash number of $3 million.
So this one, it was not identified as to what it was used for. the finance director thought it was used for the upcoming year of when you needed it to put in there. And, she said, really, it's not used, and it hasn't been used since 2016. It might have been used once. So money goes in there and keeps building this health insurance e-bank up. So that's why we took it out. We need to look for places where we can pull out the money to balance the budget. So.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
I'd like to move that the Select Board approve the interdepartmental transfers totaling $362,870 as outlined in the year-end transfer sheet submitted by the Finance Director and the Town Administrator.
All right.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. And since we have the chief sitting up here with us, we have another item a little later on in the agenda discussing the King Richard's Fair traffic study. Any objection from the board to take that out of order right now?
No.
All right.
Well, I won't object.
Chief?
Sorry, can everybody hear me? I don't want to sound like I'm yelling. I don't know if I'm talking loud enough here or not. Okay.
No, it's fine.
All right.
Thank you.
So good evening, and thank you for some time tonight. I've been asked to give an update on the traffic plan that has been prepared to better handle the traffic associated with the King Richard's Fair. If you recall, based on last year's traffic issues during the fair, the Select Board commissioned a working group to work with the fair and a traffic engineer to develop a better solution. The working group consisted of me, the fire chief, the EMS chief, the EMA director, the DPW, and the town administrator. We worked together with the owners of the fair to locate and hire a traffic engineer to prepare a plan to help mitigate traffic-related issues. Vanessa and Associates was hired to prepare the plan. The plan that they prepared conforms to all requirements as called for in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. These are the standards used when designing traffic patterns on roadways. The plan has two distinct layouts, one for higher volume days and one for lower volume days. The higher volume plan calls for 6,660 feet of 3 designated lanes of travel to help mitigate travel delays. The plan uses cones to designate the travel lanes and signage to prepare drivers for the travel pattern and guide them into the correct lane to get them to their destination. I have had discussions with the traffic engineer, and I'm satisfied that this is a good approach to take to try to help mitigate the problems we had last year. It provides us an area to stack traffic that's waiting to enter the fair while allowing through traffic to travel by with only minor interruptions. The cost of having an outside company set up this plan, the cones, and take them down is very large, but I believe that the fair, working with our own DPW, can set up the pattern and make it work at a much more reasonable cost. We all remember the issues that occurred last year and do not want a repeat of those issues. This plan gives us an excellent opportunity to mitigate those issues and reduce delays. But keep in mind, no plan is perfect, but this one definitely provides us better than we had last year. The fair has been operating in town for over 40 years, and last year was certainly a change in how it was done. And that may be an anomaly associated with COVID. It may not be. We're not sure. We'll see. However, the residents and motoring public deserve our best efforts to ensure that all that can be done is done to mitigate that problem. I believe that working with the fair to institute this plan will do that. And that's all I have for a statement on it. I'm certainly happy to take any questions as to the plan and go from there.
Other questions from the board? Ms.
Yeah.
Bogart?
Okay, I was looking at the tiny pieces of paper and they were super small. So, okay, in layman's terms or just general for me and anyone listening, how's it going to work? The 3 lanes of traffic, just how's it working?
So the plan for the heavier volume days is the one you're talking about. That is 6,600 feet of cones, dividing the 33 feet of Route 58 up into 3 travel lanes. So if you are traveling, let's start from if you're traveling north, the lane on the right would be the northbound travel lane. The lane in the middle would be the lane to go into the fair, and the lane on the left would be the southbound travel. If you're going straight through, if you're not going to the fair, you can go up the lane on the right, and you'll get past the fair traffic. If you're going to the fair, you'll come up the middle lane, where you'll come into contact with the police officer who will be directing you into the fair by stopping the southbound traffic. If the if they're having a slow time parking cars, or if there's a lot of traffic coming south, you'll be stopped and waited for the opportunity to go in to the fair. And then when there's an appropriate time to stop southbound traffic, that lane will be allowed to travel into the fair. On the opposite side, coming from the south, same 3 lanes, that far lane is still the northbound lane. The center lane will become the southbound travel lane, and the far left lane would be the turn-in lane into the fair. That will let traffic continuously flow into the fair from, if it's heading southbound, and let the officer stop the southbound traffic, the through traffic, and be able to let the northbound traffic go in. So it's I don't know that I'm the best at explaining that, but it's 3 lanes. It gives us lanes where we can have the patrons that are waiting to go into the fair stack and wait and not interfere with, minimize the interference with through traffic. I don't want to sit here and promise you that this is going to stop. There's still going to be a bunch of cars. We're still going to, but it's going to give us a better way to deal with them than we have in the past. In the past, we on our own with fair personnel set up a very small version of this from the northbound driveway to Mayflower Road, and that was very helpful when fair traffic was low. But when we saw the amount of traffic we had last year, it didn't give us enough area to stack traffic waiting to go in and allow traffic to go by.
I liked how the west end of Mayflower Road, the cones were set up super tight, so you can't get to the fair from Mayflower.
Right.
But the east end of Mayflower, it said there was going to be the option to close Mayflower.
Yeah,
Do you think you're going to? Because I live on that side of Carver. Are you going to close it to through traffic, or what's the thought there?
There'll be a sign there saying there's local traffic only, or closed to through traffic, to minimize that. One of the problems we had last year that we saw was the apps like Waze that reroute traffic. As soon as they saw 58 back up, the Waze app would reroute traffic over to Mayflower Road. We have since that well, I was on a SWAT call in Dartmouth. We needed to shut a road down. They have an app. They have an account with Waze, and they were able to go in and on Waze put red X's showing the road was closed, which wouldn't stop somebody from driving through there. Except the Waze app then doesn't use that road as part of their calculation. So we hope that we'll be able to electronically turn the road off for directions. So that Waze itself doesn't say, "Oh, 58's backed up, let's send them down Mayflower Road." So we believe that will help to mitigate it. And then a sign with some cones there to let people know it's local traffic only. And then, as you mentioned, as you get to 58, there'll be a sign there that says no left turn. There'll be a very tight set of cones so you can't cross over. And the only option you'll have then is to get into the northbound travel lane and travel past the fair. So it won't allow you to get into that lane.
So local traffic only won't mean only people who live on Mayflower. You'll still be able to go from Tremont Street over to 58.
And go up.
But it's telling you you're not getting to the fair from Tremont.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we also hope, like I said, that I think the big thing that's going to fix that is being able to interact with Waze and not have that give directions. We'll do the same thing with Meadow Street, because we found that Waze last year sent people up Mayflower or around by Meadow, causing problems.
And then you said something about the cost for setup between the DPW and the fair. What was that?
So we only today, the fair received their quote from the private company to do this, and it was very large, to say the least. Cost prohibitive to the fair, maybe. So we've talked to the DPW about could we use their personnel and cones, and we think that we can come up with a better solution here. But that still has to be worked out because we only got the quote today. But I believe that we can.
Okay.
I've talked to John Woods. He's on board with it. I've talked to the fair. I believe that we will be able to make that work.
Okay.
But I do believe we need the plan. We just got to find a way to make it work. You know what I'm saying? So.
Because would it be our DPW workers like on overtime? Like
Yes,
the town
yeah.
would be picking
but
up
the town
cost?
would the fair would pay the workers, not the other way.
Oh, okay.
So instead of paying the private company, they would pay the overtime rate
Got
for the town
it.
people to have them do it.
Okay, cool.
Which either way works with me.
Thank you.
Anything else from the board? Mr. Hoffman?
I just had a quick question, Chief. So if somebody's coming north on 58 to go to the fair, when those cones get set up, will there be an officer, or how will they know to go to the far right if they're going through, and to go to that second one if they want to go to the fair?
Very good question, and that's one of the things that this plan brings up is a lot of signage, pre-signage and then signage at the fair. So starting 2,000 feet before this even starts, there'll be changing traffic pattern ahead and signs to let you know that that's where you're going to go. And then the specific signs designed to show those 3 lanes, showing an X in the far lane, the King Richard's Fair in the middle lane, and the through travel in the other ones. There'll be a lot more signage that in the past, we've only had our electronic signboard out there for that purpose, but this plan, as I mentioned before, is designed for the standards of the manual that they use when they're doing a traffic detail on a highway or any public road, and how it relates to the specific number of signs and signs that have to be out there to guide the public.
And the other quick question, are there still just one entrance to the fair? I noticed on the little map that we had, there was a north entrance and a south entrance.
So those both exist still. This plan right now calls for doubling up of the lanes coming into the fair at the northbound and then merging them together so that it gets into the parking lot, and using the southbound lane as an exit, because one of the things we have with the fair is parents dropping their kids off to work, so people have to come in and you still have to have a small amount of traffic coming out. We haven't done it that way in the past. It's a new method that we think may help to speed things up a little bit. And I believe it will work.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anything else from the board? Deputy Boyle, do you have anything you'd like to offer on this from the fire department? Perhaps just step up to the microphone if you...
Thank you. Jesse Boyle, Assistant Deputy Chief, Code Enforcement, Fire Prevention. Being an on-call fire department, that means our firefighters respond from their homes and their jobs to the fire stations. And obviously traffic throughout town has a tremendous negative impact for us on that. And despite having, as we just heard, sirens and some loud sirens and horns and lights, it really is difficult for us to maneuver through town when the traffic was as it was last year. So I want to thank Chief Ryan and Chief Dufely and all that have participated in this, and I know some folks from Reederville are here, I'm sorry. King Richards are here as well. It's great for public safety and for everybody that's just trying to get throughout town that these efforts have been made.
Thank you, and please pass along my thanks as well to all the members of the study committee. We really do appreciate that. And while everyone's here, I think we have another item later on in our agenda where we have 18 one-day licenses for Renaissance Foods, which is the fair. Not to make you hang around for this, but I think we should perhaps discuss whether, based on Mr. Fennessy and everyone's been part of the group, do you feel comfortable with us issuing those licenses this evening? Of you or Mr. Fennessy or whoever wants to handle the question.
So let me just start. We work together on contingent language for these licenses to kind of hold their feet to the fire, to make sure that this traffic plan will be utilized and that they would cooperate with that. And the last I talked to you was probably about 4 o'clock. Has anything changed with that?
No, we're still on the same page.
Okay.
Okay. Might I suggest to the board that if there's no other questions from the board on the traffic study itself, that we also take that King Richard's Fair licenses out of order and vote on those. That way, if there's any special wording that the chief or anyone feels should be included, we can make sure that happens. So does anyone else have anything on the traffic study itself? All right, so hearing none. Mr. Fennessy, we don't need any type of vote on the traffic study, correct?
No.
All right.
Just on the...
So on the item for the 18 one-day special licenses for Renaissance Foods.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the one-day special licenses be granted to Renaissance Foods LTD for the following dates: September 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 17. Should that be 18? 24, 18, 24, and 25, and October 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 15, 16, 22, and 23, all being contingent on the following for each separate license day. 1, that the King Richard's Fair personnel shall communicate with the Carver Chief of Police or his designee at least 24 hours in advance to determine the level of traffic control setup necessary pursuant to the Vaness and Associates plan submitted to the town on or about July 1st, 2022. Number 2, that the Chief of Police or his designee shall make the final determination of the level necessary to move traffic and ensure public safety. 3, that the King Richard's Fair personnel shall cooperate with all recommendations made by the Chief of Police or his designee to implement the traffic plan. And 4, payment of all license fees.
We have a
I'll
motion.
second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Sorry, just had one question. The number of licenses that are being asked for, is that typical every year, roughly 18 one-day licenses?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Okay. Chief, any comment that language work?
Yes,
Work for you?
thank you. That would work for me, yes. Thank
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Chief, thank you very much. We appreciate your time this evening. I don't think we have anything else on the agenda that you are here for, so
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, and thank you for moving things. That was
thank you. And
not-
again, please
Thank
thank the whole committee, and we appreciate everyone's hard work. I know it's going to make a big difference to the residents.
I will. I hope it works.
All right.
It's still to be seen, but I think it will. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can stay around if you want for a little
That's
bit
right.
longer. Don't, we don't want to kick.
All right, back up to our 6 o'clock agenda item. Vote to approve and sign grant easements for Green Parkway. Mr. Fennessy, this has to do with the North Carver project, correct?
Yes. So this was Article 9 at the annual town meeting, the acceptance of the Green Park Way. And with that acceptance and the turnover of the land to us, it comes with easements. So this is a grant of easements that were pertinent to that land. So it's a simple vote of the board to accept the easements.
Okay. Questions from the board? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we accept the grant, we approve and sign the grant of easements for Green Parkway.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Just moving along, and keep in mind, we have another meeting in this room this evening. I certainly don't want to stop any discussions, but let's all try to be as concise as possible as we move forward. So our next item is our 620 item, agreement with AD Makepeace jointly with Industrial Communications for space on the tower.
We skipped one, I think. 6:15.
6:15. I'm sorry, I did skip one. I apologize. That is the agreement with Industrial Communications for use of tower located on Federal Road for wireless communications equipment and no monthly license fee. I believe the chief spoke on this at the last meeting, and we also have some points from the chief that I think you all have at your desk. Basically, I think it's a recap of what we had at the last meeting. So, does anyone have any questions on this particular item? Mr. Fennessy, do you have anything on this?
No, other than, he basically, these two are tied together.
Right.
The industrial communications and AD Makepeace. So, no, I have no other
All right.
comments.
All right. Yeah, I
From
think
what he said.
the chief did an excellent job at the last meeting of explaining it. Is there a motion here?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that the board sign the agreement with Industrial Communications for the gift of the use of the tower located at 0 Federal Road for the town's wireless public safety equipment at no monthly cost to the town.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Now we will move along to the 620 item, the agreement with AD Makepeace jointly with Industrial Communications for space on the tower free of charge for up to 2 dish antennas, including installation and associated transmission lines and ground space, and AD Makepeace shall gift to Carver a ground equipment, shelter, and base, a generator, and payment of the monthly electric charges associated with the use. Mr. Fennessy, this ties in with, as you, I think you just mentioned, our previous agenda item. Any questions from the board on this? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that the board sign the joint agreement with AD Makepeace and Industrial Communications of the gift of space on the tower for 2 public safety dish antennas, including installation and associated transmission lines and ground space, and additionally the gift from AD Makepeace of a ground equipment, shelter, and base, a generator, and payment by AD Makepeace of any monthly electric charges associated with their use.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Our next item is an update on the North Carver Water District water issues and approval of memorandum of understanding with the North Carver Water District for the return of ARPA funds to the town that were or shall be expended for the emergency needs of the district through the North Carver Water District transfer of funds at the next annual town meeting. And just so the board is aware, I've asked Mr. Fennessy to include an agenda item on all our upcoming agendas for updates on with the North Carver Water District. I think like we made, some of you will recall, I asked for a similar item with the North Carver Water when we were going through that, and I think it's important that we keep up to date on this. That there may be days when there's no update, there's nothing new, but I think we need to know. So, going forward, Mr. Fennessy.
The update on North Carver Water District. So as many of you, well, you know, and as many of the people out there know, several weeks ago there was a suspected failure of the filtration system and the membranes at the North Carver Water District water treatment plant, led to a depreciated water quality and ultimately to a determination that it was not drinkable. The Select Board met jointly with the North Carver Water District elected commissioners on June 23rd, and a few things took place. First, the town authorized water deliveries to all the affected households, and the DPW and others went door to door to drop off water on Friday morning, and this was Thursday night. Also, the Middleborough Water Superintendent was at the meeting, and he immediately stated that the connection with Middleborough Water would take place immediately thereafter, supplying water to the North Carver District until repairs could be made. And repairs may take up to a year from now. The Select Board voted to fund upfront the cost to order the membranes, to replace them, taking money that's available from ARPA funds. And that process will be a long process. It's somewhere around 33 weeks to get them delivered, because they're proprietary and they have to be made. So the fourth part of that is that both boards, the Select Board and the North Carver Water District, voted to enter into a memorandum of understanding on this process where we, the town side, would pay upfront the money to purchase these membranes, at least get it going. And at the next town meeting, the understanding is that the North Carver Water District will take money from their available funds to replenish the money to the town. And that's what you have before you, is that. Now, I just want to say, I want to thank the board and also the commissioners of the Water District working cooperatively to get this done. As you know, it was a very, very high concern for so many people, and not only those who are users, but even throughout the town who may go to a restaurant or a facility that has water, or bringing their children to a place. So everybody got through that. The water is flowing freely from Middleborough now. I sent a thank you note letter to the town of Middleborough for being gracious to do this. So we're in good standing right now. The next step will be that they'll put in a box where the connection is with a meter, so they'll actually meter out how much water is coming into Carver. That'll be then charged to the users of the district.
And just on this, so obviously the main cost is the membrane.
Yes.
But it's possible that there may be some other unforeseen items that we need to perhaps reimburse Middleborough for or whatever.
Yeah.
That we may need to take out of ARPA funds and add to the memorandum of understanding, right? So we really don't know what the final cost is going to be.
If I recall the motion that was made at that meeting, it was to allow for that.
Right.
Yeah.
For any other additional accessory.
And if I recall,
cost.
Mr. Chair, the memorandum that Mr. Fennessy sent us did have that clause.
It did. I just want to point that out for the folks at home, that it's not
Okay.
just the membrane. There may be other associated
Right.
costs as well. And I just want to add to this that I think it's times like this where you really show that you can work with other towns and find common ground. I mean, we really, Middleborough stepping up, Mr. Bumpus, he had the water on by 9 o'clock that night, and that really was a great thing, and that kind of cooperation is really important. So we owe a great deal of thanks to the town of Middleborough.
Yeah.
Are there questions from the board?
Yeah, a couple of questions. With regards to the transfer, has the opera transfer has not been made yet?
Not been made yet, no.
Okay. When will they order the membrane?
So I believe the North Carver Water District is meeting on Monday night. And so they'll authorize that at their meeting with this memorandum of understanding. They're in the process of getting another new bid, because that bid was, not a bid, a proposal, because that was dated now. So it's probably gone up a little bit from the last time. So that's in their hands.
I'm just trying to get, whoever we get it from, like, time is of the essence, because you've got, I think, the 30-week.
I know,
if I remember correctly.
yeah,
It's like
30
week after
weeks
week,
or 31 weeks.
as soon as that gets ordered, the clock starts ticking.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get
So
an
I've
idea.
talked to a number of residents, and they're tickled pink with the Middleborough water, having that. So they said, just leave that, that's good. So,
Anything else? All right, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that the Select Board enter into and sign the memorandum of understanding with the North Carver Water District for the return of ARPA funds to the town that shall be expended for the emergency needs of the district through a North Carver Water District transfer of funds at the next annual town meeting.
Is there
I'll
a second?
that.
All right, motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Our next item is the recap of the town-wide yard sale.
Yes.
Ms. Bogart.
I am happy to say it was another beautiful day. I'm always worried when we set the date that the weather's not going to be great because, there's no rain date. But it was another beautiful day, sunny, warm, but it was great. I drove around to as many as I could. We had about 60 yard sales this year, which was even more than last year. And I went to more than half of them, as much as I could, and got so much positive feedback. The energy was great from sellers, buyers, everyone on the main streets, the quiet streets, the dead ends, the everything. There were young people, older people, everything. It was just really positive. People were asking, can we do it in the fall? People were talking about next year. So the interest is there. I did reach out to a local sign company beforehand, like we had talked about getting signs made that participants could buy directly. It did not work out this year. So next year, I would start sooner, maybe reach out to more different, hopefully it would work out. And next year, again, the feedback again, I would really hope that we could have more discussions and be more open to having that common space. That just came up even more, of having a place where people could set up who lived in places that weren't optimal, or really more to have the community feel. I got that even more. People love the idea of having a togetherness space because you get more traffic there too. So, but in general, it was an awesome day, awesome second year. I actually got the most beautiful email the next day from someone who participated. It was like an email I should have written to the people who signed up and participated. So I was caught off guard with that. So it was great. So it was great. So good job, guys. Thank you, Shelby. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, everyone who helped. And it was a good day. So great recap.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Next item is the town administrator update.
Already
Mr. Fennessy.
updated. The two things were the Energy Facility Siting Board and the North Carver Water District.
Okay.
We can bypass that.
Look at that. We are moving right along here. All right. Our next item. Let's see. Minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Let's see. Approval of the minutes of 6/21.
Make a motion to approve minutes 621.
All right. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none.
Wait, one question. In citizens' participation, when that woman, Bridget McDonald, was talking about her mom, or grandmother, it said elderly grandmother lives at 6 Gate Street. Should that have said 6 Green Street? I know it's minor, but it says her grandmother lives at 6 Gate Street and has been drinking the water. 7. I think she was probably living on Green Street because the water isn't bad on Gate. I'm just guessing it was green. I don't know if we'd have to go back and watch it,
I don't
but
recall.
She can make that.
it was about, I mean, if it was about the North Carver water issue, I don't think they had bad water on gate.
I think it was
So-
green.
Yeah,
So-
I think it was green too, so.
That's all.
All right.
Make a motion to approve the 6:20 minutes as amended.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right.
I wasn't here at that meeting, so I will.
That's right. So 4-0 with an abstention. All right. The minutes of 6:23.
Make a motion to approve minutes of 6:23.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
The very end of that one, the motion to adjourn the select board meeting at 8:44, the vote was 4-0. It's got to be 3-0 because I had to leave that one early. So it was just
That is
the
true.
three of you left.
All right. Okay.
Make a motion to approve 6:23 minutes as amended.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Can I vote even though I was only here for half of them, or most of them?
Yeah.
Okay, aye.
All right. Here we go. All right.
Did you?
And I wasn't here for that as well.
Okay, let's see. Approval and release of executive session minutes of 6/7/22, 6/15/22, and 6/21/22. Is there a motion on June 7th?
Make a motion to approve the executive session minutes of 6/7.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right, 6:15.
Make a motion to approve the executive sessions on 6:15.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. And June 21st.
Make a motion to approve the executive session minutes of 6:21.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. We have a one-day special license for the Sportsman's Club.
It's not unanimous. He wasn't here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So
Okay.
he's
All right, so what was the vote? 4-0 with an abstention?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, Mr. Hoffman, I didn't hear you. Let's see, we have a one-day special license for the Sportsman's Club, 127 Main Street, on June 16th from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thoughts from the board? Is there a motion?
Well, I saw the approval of the license in here, but I didn't see the application.
I think it came late.
Okay.
This one's different.
Because I saw the old home day one came today, but in the packet for the Sportsman's Club one, all I saw was the notice of approval.
So the board voted on this last time, but they
Okay.
put the application, the date was wrong on their end.
Okay.
So this is just the fixed date.
Okay.
All right, so is there a motion to approve?
A motion to approve the license for the Sportsman's Club for July 16, 2022.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous. And then we have the late one. This came in just this afternoon, a request for one-day special license for Shirtlift Park for Carver Old Home Day, July 30th, from 12 to 8 p.m. or until the event ends. It's for the Upland Ale DBA Brewery 44.
What happens if we don't approve it?
I make a motion that we approve the one-day special license at Shirtlift Park for Carver Old Home Day, July 30th, at 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. or until the event ends. Upland Ale, DBA, Brewery 44.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Select Board, Community Announcements. Mr. Cotter.
Sure. Something for the little ones. I guess there's an event at the Carver Library sponsored by the Mass Cultural Council for Toe Jam the Puppet Band tomorrow at 1 p.m. I used to take my kids to the library during the summer for these special events, and it was always fun. So I think you should check it out.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bogart?
I don't think I have any tonight.
All right. Mr. Hoffman?
I just want to thank Jen and all your hard work on that townwide yard sale. Heard a lot of good things about it.
Great.
And keep it going. Great job.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Ms. Ewens.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind people that tickets for the clam bake at Old Home Day go fast. So the number to call is 508-866-9196 to reserve your ticket.
Great.
And it's a great clam bake.
Thank you. I also want to just point out that July 30th is Carver Old Home Day, and that's always one of the highlights of the summer here in Carver. So I hope everyone will attend. And just a quick note to the board. So our next meeting on 8/2/22 will be our goals and objectives meeting. And I think that's goals and objectives for the board as well as for the town administrator. So I'm going to ask that we send out a copy of the current assessment sheet that we have for the town administrator. I think it's important, now that we've moved along in that process, that we let Mr. Fennessy know what our expectations are of the town administrator. So I'm going to ask them to send that out again. Obviously, it's a little old and some of the questions might need to be updated, but take the time between now and 8/2 so that we can discuss that and come up with an actual assessment for Mr. Fennessy on 8/2. So take that time if you want to take it and make an appointment to stop in and see Mr. Fennessy and discuss some items with him. Take the time to do that, before that meeting. So I think that's very important. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a motion and a second? Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Will.